So you've heard about the power of testing tools and the value of A/B splits in order to increase your engagement and optimize conversion on your website. How do we particularly do this so that we get maximum results in minimum time? Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's copywriting tips. If you're a copywriter and you're writing copy but not testing, you're doing a disservice to yourself and your client simply because you're not going to know what works and what doesn't outside of subjection. So if you have an A/B split between a color of a checkout button, for example, and you know that orange works better than red, then you have something you can work with. For example, if you're testing headlines on a blog, you might test headlines for engagement. And so headline A, does it cause more people to read the article than headline B? These are important measures. Now, these measures have to be statistically accurate in order to be predictive of the outcomes that you're looking for. So if you want to increase sales, if you want to increase engagement, if you want to increase time on site in relevant areas, the testing is valuable. But if you don't have enough impressions, you're not going to be able to test in a time frame that is meaningful. What do I mean by that? So I have some campaigns here, and I'm just looking on the side screen. And by the way, there's show notes that has screenshots of what I'm looking at. I just want to make sure you get the key essentials here on testing. Well, I have a campaign that has 1,911 impressions over a 192-day period. That's not enough impressions fast enough in order to test. I've worked with clients that have 1 million impressions a day. Now, in an environment like that, if you need 2,000 to 5,000 impressions on a valid A/B split, meaning you're testing side A versus side B, headline A versus headline B, and you have 2,500 impressions, you could know whether A is better than B. But if you add a third test there, if you're testing A, B, and C, now you need to have around 5,000 impressions, because if traffic was evenly spread between those three, you wouldn't have enough. You would just barely have enough to know whether or not somebody is um, is interested, whether the cohorts and the audiences are interested in one headline over another. Another factor to consider is the complexity of your testing. You can test manually. You can, for example, have two landing pages, which you split traffic between the two, and then whichever landing page has the first 100 actions. Bob Bly talks about 100 actions as kind of a measure of testing. You could then put, if you're splitting traffic 50-50, now you can split the traffic 60-40, and the favor being going to the page with 100 impressions. And then after you have 100 more impressions, you could split the traffic 80-20, with 80 going to the page that is receiving the most conversion. And then you can put all that data into a calculator and tell whether or not it's statistically accurate, whether it's representational of behavior that may continue in the future. Here's the important thing though. In order to get 100 actions, you might need to have 1,500 impressions or 500 impressions. A good measure is for every 200 impressions, you're going to get one action. And that's conservative. That's how you measure to see whether the monetary part works. So when I sit down with a client and they say, we have a $26 offer, I can go through and determine how much on the back end they need to charge in order to break even on a campaign. And with that, we can determine how many impressions we need. And then we can figure out that a $26 offer is not going to be a sales offer, because you're not going to get enough business through there in a timely fashion to break even. These analyses are necessary if you're going to do any testing. Now, let's say on your entire website, you don't get 1,900 impressions a day. You don't get 5,000 impressions a month. Your focus isn't on the testing. It's on the front end traffic generation. So let's say you have a newsletter site. So you're doing copywriting services, and you have a irresistible offer, kind of a bait piece, and you're driving traffic to your website in general, to just the main website, and that bait piece is not picking up enough people. Testing how you reference the bait piece isn't going to be very useful. What you should do when we talk about campaign design is send traffic to the landing page itself, the specific landing page, and then try to get 20 to 50 unique visitors a day on that landing page, which should deliver enough impressions that now you can start testing the call to action on the landing page. Now remember, every time you test more than one thing, you're dividing the traffic. So if you need 1,500 impressions on a landing page in order to get 100 actions on that page, and now you're going to test an offer and a headline, you need 3,000 impressions to get the same 100 tests. Because you may get 100 actions on the offer and you may get 100 actions on the headline. How do you know which of the actions are relevant to continue the behavior? See, this is what we're really working on. We're actually applying behavioral modification in order to influence visitors to a website or visitors on a sales letter to take action. Now, when I was doing, when I help clients that are doing postal campaigns, or I was doing postal campaigns in-house, we would have to take a mailing list of 5,000 names. That was the minimum number you could order. And then we'd take a cell, which is a subset of the 5,000 names. And so we would do every other name, and that would be a cell of 2,500 that we're going to test. And then we would send 500 letters of A and 500 letters of B in the first week to that cell. And then we would tag those records, A versus B. Now, if the mailing company required we mail all the names in a certain time frame, then we had to mail a larger cell. But if we could do 500 A, 500 B, and then the next week we swap, so everybody that received A is now going to receive B, and everybody that received B is now going to receive A. On the back end, we'd have nasty spreadsheets keeping track of all that stuff, and we'd have a database keeping track of all that stuff, but it would allow us to spend less money up front and figure out which campaign is better. And then we could do the same thing. We did a 50-50 split, A versus B, and then we got performance, so we might move B up a little bit. And then we get performance, we might move A up a little bit. But we're basically dialing in our break even. And so what we'd look at is our doubling date, and we'd look at our break even, and we want to try to get the break even as quickly as possible. When you do a marketing campaign, for the interest of you being able to pay attention, you want to try to get the campaign finished within 30 days. So you drop the campaign today. Now, what's beautiful about the internet is if you can drop a campaign today and you can have it tested out by the afternoon. My clients that have 100,000 impressions a day, 1 million impressions a day, they're able to do a test campaign to launch it in the morning and know what works by the afternoon. And that's very intense. It's very focused. We can use more automation there. But when you have a typical consulting website or a subject matter expert website, you may have to test. A visitor comes to the landing page, not the general website, comes to the landing page, and they have the choice to take the offer or not to take the offer. And then you would want to cookie them so that you can retarget and bring them back to the same website so that now we can test with more than one impression. But knowing that we had visitors that have more than one impression in order to take the offer or not take the offer, we've got to, from that point, test again on a larger audience because we're now having 2 touches instead of 1. If this is confusing, don't do testing. Focus on implementing best practices. So when I'm looking at these campaigns, we did a headline test where we basically, for every headline on a blog post, because we'd get the content up there, and then we'd put in 2 test variations. Now, in a case where I have 1,500 views, 5,000 views, I can get a really good test. I can determine engagement. I can determine how many people actually made it to the opt-in page. I can determine how many people have converted. And so we build a funnel: general impressions, impressions on a specific page, conversion activity. See, because a lot of you folks that we've worked with, and we work as a group, and if you are a member of the Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips newsletter, we can go and sit down with you and do a case study. But if you're not engaging that funnel, if you're not looking at where the traffic exists, then what's going to end up happening is you'll spend a lot of time and frustration trying to fix specific campaigns. Over the course of the last 20 years, I have probably 30 or 40 active campaigns at a time. and then they kind of trail off. So after that 30 days, the test is still running because it's all automated, but I'm only going to check it once a quarter to do the optimization. When it comes to opt-in conversions, our email marketing product that we're using, visitors can come in to a page, a static page that will then A/B the just the offer. And so my goal is to get as much traffic to that page as possible, and then based on the offer that gets the best conversion, to create a new landing page to test against. So we're going to test everything versus everything, but the offers are the same between the two. And if that makes sense, we have the structure of a landing page would be a headline, opening paragraph, fascinations, call to action, and then a privacy notice. That's a typical email landing page. So you see what we're getting at here. Testing is complex, but don't be afraid of testing. Instead, back off of the detailed testing, because it is exciting that these tools can test all kinds of things, but back off the detailed testing and go look at the big picture. Does your theme load quickly and engage prospects? Are your pages technically accurate, and you have inbound links both internally and externally to specific landing pages? If you're a copywriter, consultant, a service professional, do you have one key offer to get people on your mailing list? And then immediately after those people are on the mailing list, do you offer them a specific consultation, product, or service? Because there's another factor as well. We can test on the front end to generate leads. We can test in our in-house list to generate consultations. And then based on the consultations, we can prepare proposals and set up the sales opportunity. Now, testing is completely different if you have a catalog. We have a number of test sites that I use in-house to demonstrate these things. Because again, when you're working with a client, there is power in testing 500,000 impressions in a day. Because there is value in knowing sales letter A with this particular audience closes at 23%, and sales letter B with this particular audience closes at 28%. And if you have bigger numbers, that little change in the two can signal what we do next, but it can also be worth 15, over the course of a year, 15 or 20,000 leads on a list. And so when we construct these offers, again, we're focusing on a few offers to get enough traffic over a short period of time so that we can then take action on what we learn. What happens if it's not a short period of time? Well, if I had a client who wanted to do A/B split testing on a cart buttons, for example, and in 183 days, they're only getting 152 impressions, they aren't doing enough of front-end traffic in order to be worth doing any testing. It doesn't matter what color the button is if nobody's visiting the page. If I had somebody who had 1,900 impressions in one day on a landing page or a name squeeze page, and they were getting a 2% conversion, then that's a good area to focus your time and effort, because having more in-house leads means better outcomes and results. So there's kind of a double-edged sword here. When we would drop a letter and we'd have to wait a week before we'd see the results of that letter, we actually had better tests, because again, we could get a list of 5,000 people. We could send them letter A, letter B on cells of 500. Once those cells got up to about 2,500 names, we'd have a really good idea, total mail. We'd have a really good idea of what campaign worked better. And then we would send that campaign to the rest of the 2,500. And then we'd have sales come in, and we'd have appointments set, or we'd have the telephone ringing off the hook. If our measures were imperfect, we still had better results because we could go get 5,000 more names and run the whole series again in the next month. Because by the end of the month, 4 weeks in a month, we would have been able to rotate the series and get one more control test in. Well, we would have determined a control, and then we get one more test in place before we repeat the control on a larger segment the next month and start our next series of tests. Testing is critically important, especially when you have a high ticket product, because if you can dial in and determine what turns that 200 impressions into one sale, because you might have 200 impressions to get one lead, test there, figure that out. And then you have 200 impressions to get one consultation, figure that out. And then 200 impressions and you got one high ticket sale, then you can afford to just buy the impressions. You don't have to Twitter, or you don't have to troll social media. You don't have to write the perfect YouTube video. You can just broadcast what you got, which is essentially what I'm doing here, because I can afford to just retarget. So let's say we have somebody land on the Ad Briefings copywriting page and they don't opt in, but they fit the same audience demographic that I know is a buyer. I can just invite them back. I can follow them around the internet and say, I know how much money I can spend. I'll follow them around the internet, and then eventually they'll opt in if they're a target customer. And then as soon as they opt in, they have the opportunity to become a paid newsletter subscriber, or to sign up for a private consultation, or to sign up for the group coaching program. There's a funnel in place. Understand you're not going to have that set up front. Understand it's not going to be automated. Understand it's not going to be fancy charts and graphs and conversion tracking and all kinds of different platforms. But if we focus at where our traffic is, because you can't convert a customer that's not there, and we focus on our content that's targeted for a specific audience, and we focus on reaching those people in a measurable way. It's not about the next viral video. It's not about the next social media, engaging post. It's about 50, 100 different posts that all drive to a single point of test. And from that single point of test, we can start learning something. If you'd like to learn something about your marketing, and you'd like to start drilling down and actually getting clients in an automated fashion, because just like Jeff Paul talks about the sifting and sorting of individuals, or that's Joe Polish. Joe Polish talks about the sifting and sorting of individuals. Jeff Paul talked about it too, but he was talking about mail order. The underlying factor is we don't want to splash people up against the page and waste the impressions. That's why testing is important. But testing at the right stage of the development of your website, the right stage of the development of your business, makes all the difference. If you write a sales letter for a client and they aren't going to have at least 1,500 impressions on that sales letter, there is no way they can objectively know whether your sales letter works or not. And so they're just throwing spaghetti against the wall. That's not a very good client. You want people who know, because they have a testing routine. That's why I spelled it out. You should be able to recognize the testing routine. You want people who have legitimate tools in place if they have high volume. If they don't, they have legitimate processes in place for low volume. So if you run a sales letter for 30 days and it gets 5,000 impressions in 30 days, and you haven't had an A/B split, you haven't had tracking cookies or pixels on the thank you page, you haven't had clear measures of this period over a previous period. If they don't have any of that stuff, then they're not measuring. And so there's no way for them to scientifically know. Read scientific advertising. There's no way for them to scientifically know that what they're doing will improve business. Now, that might make a good client in the short term because they're going to keep buying that next sales letter, but they're going to buy it from different people every time because they don't know that what you've done has got results. So if you want me to deep dive into this workshop, I know I've done topic testing that can tell you more about topics that are valuable to your clients. I can go in depth about how we test in-house, but also how you can test at different scale levels. If you have 1 million impressions a day, 500,000 impressions a day, I can show you testing that will triple or quadruple the amount of revenue that you produce. Not necessarily conversion rates, because again, we can use retargeting. If your conversion rate is low on the first visit, you can get a conversion rate that's higher on the second visit, third visit, fourth visit, if we're then scoping down that audience. If you've got blog posts where you want increased engagement, I've seen 300 or 400% increases in engagement. If you want to talk about that, you visit www.adbriefings.co.uk, and we can do a one-on-one and go right into your stats, go right into your Google Analytics, go right into your testing tools, and show you how to increase your performance or areas that you need to be working on. But if you're just getting started and your primary role is to get consulting clients or to get coaching or copywriting clients, then it's the big picture until you get enough traffic. Again, enough traffic could be 5,000 impressions in a short period of time. You can get a lot of testing done. The shorter the period, the better. So it's not about the volume. It's about the period in which you get the volume. And then some of the tools will automate it for you. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, if you don't understand the methodology, then it's just going to be a massive headache and you're going to be distracted. Google Insights, Facebook Insights, LinkedIn Insights, it's all distraction unless you know what you're talking about. And I'd be more than happy to go into detail about that on a webinar and then answer your specific questions. Just let me know in the comments below if that's something of interest to you. Go to www.adbriefings.co.uk and ask a question related to that topic. And as you know, I compile all these things together. And if it's worthy of a webinar, we'll go deep dive. I'll go deep in it and I'll show you exactly how it works. Because again, if you can test, you can put better content out there and you can get more conversion and you'll have more money to spend on advertising and you'll ultimately be growing up where you get 250,000, 500,000, a million impressions within a month on your website, and you'll actually know what works. You can scale your business. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips, where we help copywriters and marketers grow their book of business to become from freelance, where they don't know where their next job's coming from, to have a consistent stream of revenue coming in day after day, month after month, and agency level stability in their income and growth. And we do that at www.adbriefings.co.uk. I'm sure there's going to be another video over here if you're binging and wasting time instead of implementing what we just talked about. But otherwise, ask your questions below. Let me know if you're interested in a deep dive, and we can go and teach you this stuff so that you'll know what copy works and what copy doesn't.